Hello, this is Socially Triggered, and this video is going to be my second part video on George Floyd, and it's going to look at sort of the bigger story about George Floyd and the situation about Black people in America. And the question I always want to ask is: are Black people oppressed? Is it the case that really, these poor Black people in America are being oppressed on a daily basis, and their lives are being destroyed by evil white men who just seek to destroy Black people's lives? And are cops just going around shooting Black people? What's the truth? And I kind of want to address an issue from my first video. So if you watch my first video, I basically talked about the George Floyd case, and I looked at it from sort of a legal standpoint. Now, I thought what happened was horrible. The officer, I really seemed to, have a disregard for the life of George Floyd. And I thought, the other two police officers, they seem to have the same disregard for George Floyd's life. However, more information has come out since I did my first video. And I kind of wanted to address that before I get into all the other stuff that I wanted to address. Now, what my previous video was about was really looking at the bigger picture again. I always try to look at things in a different way than most people. Everyone always assumes that it's a racism case, but I see it as a legal case, that George Floyd died because of negligence. But why did the officer act with negligence? Now, so here's the situation. According to the police handbook, and I quoted it in responding to a comment in my previous video. According to the police handbook, it is okay for a police officer to use a lock or a choke to control the person that he's arresting. And so that's step one. So basically, the officer is legitimately allowed to do what the police officer did in the video. So he basically controlled him by locking the neck and controlling the back of George Floyd. So that's, according to the handbook, perfectly legit. Now, the other part of the handbook that I should have quoted as well is that according to the handbook, the police officer must maintain the control of the suspect until medical assistance arrives, if a choke is applied. So a choke was applied. So according to the handbook, the police officer must wait for medical assistance to arrive before anything can be done about the suspect. He must be turned over to medical assistance to make sure that there's no problems. So what happened? George Floyd's suffering, and he gets turned over to the medical assistance. It takes 10 minutes. Like, it was 9 minutes roughly that George Floyd was on the ground, and 2 minutes of that 9 minutes he was actually unconscious. Now, the police officer followed those rules. Now, another rule within the handbook is that the police officer must be, aware of the health of the person that he's arresting. So he must be aware of whether or not the person is under any distress. Not necessarily the health. I'm not talking about the entire health of George Floyd. I'm just talking about if what he's doing is causing any distress to the person that he's arresting. Now, if you read the autopsy suggested that the pressure to the back and to the neck did not cause either respiratory or blood flow issues for George Floyd. Those were not the cause of the death. So basically, it wasn't a choke being applied. That was my concern, that maybe a choke was being applied. Even accidentally, it could happen. But the police officer did not apply a choke, where George Floyd died from being choked out or something like that. That was not the cause of death. The cause of death was drugs inside of George Floyd's body plus alcohol. So that was what led to his death. And probably stress as well. If you're in a stressful situation, you probably your body goes through major stress conditions, and that with the drugs and all these other things led to his death. Now, should the cop been aware of this distress? Possibly. And that is why I would say it was, a third-degree murder. That the cop was negligent, that he wasn't responsible for looking at the safety of George Floyd. But he followed the handbook. So the issue is the handbook itself. The handbook is written poorly, so that it can cause these issues where you may cause accidental death. And I guess since this has been sort of become a big story, they've looked at other cases where this has happened before, where this is not the first time that people have been medically affected by the police handbook's rules. Not that they died or anything, but that this is not the first time that this kind of situation has happened. And again, it's the handbook is the problem, not the cops being racist or anything like that. That's a wrong narrative. We should look at what is the source of the problem. The problem isn't that cops are going around being racist. It's that the police handbook has a major flaw that can cause cops to basically indirectly, and if they're a little bit negligent, the deaths of the people that are under their care. And I want to be clear about this, that one of the problems, and it's hard to like, it's one of those things that just happens, okay? So when Black people are arrested, one of the most common things that they say is that, oh, I'm uncomfortable. Oh, I can't breathe. Oh, this. And then they use those excuses to try to escape. And it's very common. It's not like, all these Black people are super, super innocent and, oh, they're just being victimized. That's not the case. A lot of the police are being constantly put into the situation where they don't know if the person is lying to them or not lying to them, because it happens all the time where they say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm whatever. And the cop, as a result, become kind of immune to it. Like, if the first time you fool me, sure, and I'll let you go and make you comfortable, and then you run off. The second time, a bit wary. Third, fourth, fifth, it gets to the point where they just become numb to it. And that's what I saw in the video. They were numb to the way George Floyd was behaving. They were numb to the fact that, hey, he is suffering true distress. And that's a problem. And I'm not sure even how to solve that problem, because, what do? Do you tell all Black people, well, only say you're distressed when you're distressed? It's just not realistic. So the point is, there's a bit of that has to be understood, that the cop might be responding based on his experience. And the reason we see it as like, why is he being so stoic? Why is he being so like have no care or concern for the pleas of George Floyd? Like, why is, he's begging for help, he's begging that he can't breathe, he's all of these issues. And what that does is, as I said, the cop is numb to it. And that is kind of something that's a real problem. And I'm not sure how to solve that problem, but it's something to be aware of. So that's the George Floyd case. And as I said, it's a bigger issue than racism, because I hate when people jump to the conclusion, oh, it's racist. But no, just because it's a white guy and a Black guy Doesn't make it racist. If the roles were reversed, we wouldn't call it racist. So the point is, you gotta just look at the circumstances and don't try to imply motive when that, and as an answer for why the thing happened. It was not racism. Now let's look at what the repercussions were. Repercussions were the riots. The media wants to say friendly, peaceful, loving protests, but that's not the case. These were riots, and the riots, burned, entire businesses down to the ground, and that that is a major issue that has to be addressed. And I hold the media somewhat responsible. I hold the education system somewhat responsible. I hold the government responsible for this. And the reason I hold them all responsible, and I hold the black people responsible too, of course, is what happened is if you tell people from day one that they are oppressed, that society's out to get you, and everything that happens to you that's bad um, is due to racism. There's no other reason. It's racism. It's not your fault. It's racism. Well, two things happen. One, if you feel like somebody is biased to you, you're going to interpret their actions as being biased ones towards you, no matter what they do. I almost feel like it's the Trump effect. No matter what Trump says, the media interprets him as evil. Like it cures cancer, it's evil. So it's kind of like the same thing. They're so biased. They think this man is evil. No matter what he does, it must be evil. Well, the same happens with black people. They're told that white people are kind of like Trump in this case, are so evil that no matter what they do, it's got some alternative motive, ulterior motive, or has some like racist underlying meaning behind it. And that is what's really going on. They're just a bunch of racist, evil people that are trying to just bring the black man down. And that's what they've been taught. That's the way that they think of white people. And I could see this in the way the riots took place. The way the rioters kind of acted is there's this deep-seated hatred for white people. And so if you wonder about racism in America, well, that is racism, that they're naturally hating white people. And it's because they've been taught to hate white people. Now, white people, on the other hand, have been taught the opposite. Like I remember when I was a kid, we were taught, equality, love, don't be racist, and they would teach us this from day one. Like it's just like constantly indoctrinated into us. So much so, and they told us that we're racist. That was the annoying thing. We're constantly being taught not only that we have to be careful about being racist, but that we are racist. And so you're very paranoid. You don't want to be racist. You want to make sure you treat everyone fairly, and you don't want to have like a negative opinion about somebody that's black. And like it used to be that people would be like colorblind. We couldn't even say black. It's like that man over there with the something special about his skin color. Like, you just couldn't say black. And it was really awkward because we couldn't face certain truths that people of different races are different. They act differently and stuff. We had to assume everybody had the same attitudes as we did, and like it wasn't true. People are different. And I'm not saying that means that they're bad, or I'm not saying that. Like I'm saying that people are different. We just got to recognize that they are different. And as a result, you have these two sides. One, white people who are being taught to be like almost like they're broken. I think white people are kind of broken right now. Like I saw one video where it almost made me cry inside. It just was so painful. Where it was a group of white people, and they were all on their knees, and they were in front of a group of black people, and they were all begging begging, please forgive us. Please forgive us for what we did. And the black people are like, yeah, you better forget, better ask us for our forgiveness. And it's like, why? Why are these white people doing this? This is embarrassing. This is sad. Like they probably did nothing against any black person. They probably are, been trained just like I was trained to, be respectful of all different cultures and groups. And they probably just want to live their lives, and they don't even really care about what the other races do. So it's just the wrong narrative that has been pushed on everybody. And so the black people have this thing that, oh, these evil white people have this thing, oh, we're evil and we got to atone for our evilness. And that creates a false narrative, a really false narrative that just allows these kind of protests to happen or riots to happen, where the media is even absolving the rioters of any wrongdoing. They don't even see it as a riot. They see it as a friendly protest. And buildings are burning and cars are getting flipped over, bricks are being thrown, people are getting beaten up. But that's a friendly protest. And it doesn't. And the funny thing is they keep on saying we want justice. Now, one of the things that doesn't make sense is, well, they actually got more than fair justice in this case, even with the George Floyd case, because what happened? Normally, what happens is the police officers are suspended with pay, and then an investigation happens. They look at all the facts of the case, and then if there's enough evidence to say, hey, there was a criminal wrongdoing by the police officers, then they take those police officers to court. And that's usually the process. That's the legal process that protects justice, okay? And what happened in this case was that process was sped up. Basically, the police were fired, not suspended. They were suspended for a very short time, but then they were fired. One of them is now facing criminal charges and is going to be sent to court to face those charges. And probably based on the whole hype on this case, will probably not even be given fair treatment within the court. They'll be biased towards him, and he probably will go to jail, rightly or wrongly. I mean, I do think he should be sentenced to third-degree murder, but that doesn't mean we change the court system just because this case is they've been hyper promoted by the media and by activists. Like, this is not a case of racism. It's not a case. It's a case of some wrongdoing. Okay, and you have to follow the procedure of the justice system. So in this case, they got their justice. So what now? What do we give them? Do you want the guy hanging from a tree? Do you want his family killed too? What's justice at this point? What kind of justice do they want? They've already killed a whole bunch of people within these riots. They've destroyed over 100 businesses. They've destroyed countless lives. So what kind of justice do they need? What would make them happy? I don't even think they know. I think this is just them blowing off steam and causing havoc. And it doesn't make them look good. It doesn't make the black cause look good. And the thing that makes me upset is that some of these business owners have put signs, like, their shop is completely destroyed, and they put signs of support for the protests. It's so stupid. These protests were not, there were peaceful parts to them, but the riot and so forth have really undermined that message. So now that's the second part of what I kind of wanted to talk about. Now the third part is whether or not this whole narrative that we've been taught is white people evil, black people good, and oppressed. Is that even true? And based on the statistical data, it just isn't. It just isn't the case. If if you wanted to like let's say this life that we live is a game, and you wanted to pick your character, like your little avatar, and each character has benefits and weaknesses. Uh, and the question is, which character would you pick if you want to kind of get the most benefits in this society that we live? And the character you'd want to pick, because they get the most benefits, the easiest opportunities, would be a black character. And the reason for that is our society has this crazy narrative that black people are oppressed and they need opportunities. So our society has gone out and created all those opportunities. They create special scholarships for black people. It lowers the standards for black people. It has special hiring programs at companies for black people. And it has all these opportunities that advantage black people and disadvantage white people. And then you say, well, but how about the cops? The cops are out to kill us. Well, there's actually a really cool experiment that was done, and I'll link the experiment in my comments, um, where they took 80 cops, and they were black cops and white cops in the sample. And what they did is they had these cops look at a simulation, okay, and they had a button. Shoot, don't shoot. Like they had a button to choose what they want to do. Do they shoot the person or not shoot the person based on the circumstances? And they basically looked at the reaction times. How quickly did they shoot or not shoot the person that they were looking at? And how often did they shoot the wrong person? Did they kill the wrong guy or did they shoot the wrong guy? And they looked at all those things, and the victims, and not victims, but the perpetrators in the simulation were either white people or black people. Now, what they noticed in this experiment was that the reaction times for, if it's a white perpetrator, were much shorter. So the cops were much quicker to pull the trigger and shoot if it's a white perpetrator. Okay, so there was a bit of a delay when it was a black perpetrator. Uh, Not much, but there was a delay. It was significant. It was within error that there was a significant delay that a black person would be shot if they were seen as somebody that you had to shoot. So the point is, there was this delay, right? Also, they were more likely to shoot incorrectly white people in the simulation. Okay, so you say, well, okay, this is just a simulation though. The numbers don't play out in real life. Well, actually they do. That's the funny thing is, so you look at the numbers, and the numbers in this, like if you go to the FBI criminal stats thing, you can look through the numbers and pour through all the stats. And basically what you have is white people are twice as commonly shot by police officers as black. So two times. But then people say, oh, wait. There's 63% of the people within America are white, okay? And only 13% are black. So you'd say, well, you'd expect maybe about 5 times as many white people to be shot than black people. So you say, well, okay, but who are the types of people that are going to be involved with police officers? Who are the types of people that are going to be more likely to get shot when they are involved with police officers? So if you get pulled over with a parking ticket, you're not likely to get shot. It's really rare. It does happen, but it's really rare unless you do something really stupid. But it does happen. Okay, I grant that. But the point is, usually the type of engagement determines the likelihood of guns being fired, or something happening where somebody's going to get shot. So then you say, well, okay, who does the majority of that type of crime that involves a more aggressive exchange between the police officer and the the criminal, I guess. And what it is, if you look at it, well, 50% of all murders are black people that are doing the murdering. If you look at theft, really high percentage. I forget, it's like 50%, somewhere in there, are black people committing those crimes. So and then white people around 25%. So really the number is actually the opposite, that what you would expect. So it's about double the amount of crime committed by black people, even though their percentages are much less. So if you think of it, double the crime, it's about 10 times the level of crime within the black community compared to the white community. So it's disproportional, very disproportional, the amount of crime. So when you have that kind of stat and you do all the math and the crunching of the numbers, you're actually, as a white person, engaging with the police compared to a black person engaging with the police. You're twice as likely to get shot. You're twice as likely to have get shot even when you're unarmed. So the point is, uh, you're actually better off when dealing with police to be black. And it goes against the narrative, but these are based on looking at the statistical information. Even that study that I said, where they looked at how cops react to a black criminal, they generally delay in terms of their response time. So what I'm trying to get at is, maybe it's the case that black people aren't oppressed, and we attribute so much to racism, when maybe that's not what we should be looking at. We shouldn't be looking at that. We should maybe be looking at what is really going wrong with the black community. And I do believe that this whole narrative doesn't just hurt white people, it hurts black people. That if you're constantly telling a group of people that they're oppressed, that they have no hope, that they no matter what they do, they will be put down by society, well, then they will generally not perform that well. You always hear every kind of movie, this is like kind of a trope, that you have to work twice as hard if you're black. And it's just not true. But it's something that they believe. They say, oh, we have to work twice as hard. But who wants to work twice as hard? So nobody does it. Like, nobody works twice as hard. And the few that do work hard become very successful. And the thing is, ultimately, white people want black people to be successful. Really, that's the ultimate goal of white people, because, as I said, most of the crime in America comes from black people. It is a problem where, if that problem was gone, everybody would be a bit happier. Like, if we could reduce that crime, people would be just that much happier. So white people really do want black people to succeed. And it can really be seen, if you want to see, like, oh, just because of the color of your skin, you're being treated poorly in America. You think that? Well, why is it that immigrant black people outperform white people in America? If it's truly the case that, if you're black, you're going to be put down by society, if everything's working against you, well, why is it that when black immigrants come, first generation immigrants, they can actually outperform white people, outperform in terms of income that they can generate? So if it's truly the case that they're being discriminated against, that their lives are like, being put down by the evil white man, well, why is it that they can outperform white people? And this is like, the immigrants that come in generally don't have very much they're usually refugees, or they have real hurdles that they have to overcome. Compared to blacks in America, like blacks that have been multiple generations in America, have way better off, and have they're set to be successful compared to immigrant that's black coming to America. But because of the attitude of an immigrant is like, oh, land of the opportunity, like, oh, America's so rich, and they want to work hard and they want to be successful, so they become successful pretty easy. Whereas Americans that are black in America, like multiple generations, they have this attitude that America is not the land of opportunity, that it's the land of like discrimination and racism. So they don't try, they give up. So attitude is one of the big things that is holding black Americans down, that they really have to realize that actually it's better to be black than being any other race. You have so many advantages, and you should take advantage of those advantages. Um, so, so one of the narratives that I kind of want to address is this whole concept of the discriminated black person. This that are they truly oppressed? And I hope that what I've been saying kind of clarifies that really they aren't, but they really have to make a change in their own communities in order to address the problems within their communities. Right now, like I was actually going to do a separate video about why are black people in America poor. And the first thing I realized was that they weren't. That was like, it was like I was going to, make a narrative, and the narrative was like, oh, poor black people, they are poor in America, but they aren't. It just isn't true. Black people in America actually are the best off in the whole entire world. If you're a black person, where do you want to be? You want to be in America because you're going to be far, just not even close. Like compare a black American to a black African, not even close, just not even comparable. They they have way more wealth. They are just way better off. So they're not poor. They're not these poor poor people. It's so even the narrative is wrong that you can't say, oh, poor black Americans, because they're not poor. They're actually doing okay. They may not be as rich as white people, but that doesn't really matter. Like, we're always kind of comparing ourselves to other groups. Well, if I was really concerned about being like less than another group, like, oh, Asian people do better than white people, way better, just way better, not even close. And Jewish people do way better than Asian people. Like Jewish people on average earn like $175,000 a year. Okay. White people on average is like 40 some odd, 50 some, it's like in that range. So it's like not even close. Like, but do you say, oh, those evil Jewish people? Well, some people do, but I'm not saying that. I'm saying, like, it is what it is. I'm not going to feel bad that they've become successful. I'm not going to say, oh, I'm being oppressed by those evil people. I just look at my own circumstance and try to make the best of my circumstance that I can, and try to be one of the rich and successful people in society. So when I was looking at, doing this other video of why are black people poor, at first, well, I realized, hey, this narrative's totally false in the first place, and I couldn't really get into it. But I did look at why they are poor relative to other groups. And one of the reasons they are poor to other groups is they lack community. And when I say community, I mean two levels. One is if you look at Jewish people, and Jewish people, since they're the most successful in our society, you wonder, why are they so successful? Well, what do? They go to church a lot. They're very religious. And religion within the Jewish community is not just, it's not something separate. It's not like, oh, I go to church on Sundays. No, no, no. it's part of their culture. It's part of who they are. Uh, they 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 do everything around their religious, uh, you know, culture. They attend a lot of events. They do things, and they're always engaged with other Jewish people, and it makes their culture very, very tight knit. And as a result, they really support each other. So it's like I'm a businessman, so I have a tendency of going to networking events where I really try to meet the same people over and over again, and you get really close. And you, after a while, like you might not get any opportunities from those business people when you meet them, but over time, when they get to know you and they understand what you do, they start giving you, say, hey, I actually know somebody that might need your help. And then after a while, you get all these kind of leads and business dealings, and you can actually do extremely well. Well, imagine your whole culture is based on that, where you're constantly networking with other successful people. Well, if you constantly network with successful people, you'll generally be successful. So that tight knit culture is very key to Jewish people's success. And I'd say it's the tightest knit culture of any. Asian people also have that. White people have it to a certain extent, and but not as much actually. And black people have it the least. It's just they don't really work together very well in terms of. I mean, they do have a strong community, but they have a tendency of not really supporting each other. They don't like to see each other succeed, and that's a problem. Uh, so the other community that I think is important is the family, the culture of the family. So if you look at the stats, it's like 70 to almost 80% of black families are single mother led families, where the father is just not present, and that is not a good situation. So when the father is not present, it's like one parent is basically responsible for two parents' work. It actually takes two parents to really make a successful child and happy home, because one has to work or both work, but then they share responsibility of raising the children. If you have two people, it's a little bit easier than if it's just one person. So this high single motherhood rate, it's the stats were really horrible about what the impact that has on the children. It's like 10 times more likely to go to prison, 5 times less likely to graduate, all these kind of things kind of, I think that I'm not sure if those stats are right, but it's in that ballpark. Um, but the point is, if you're raised by a single mom, you're not set to be successful. And if you have a whole culture that's based on single motherhood, you're really lacking that father influence. I mean, fathers do have merit; they actually are useful because women have that sort of emotional parenting, which is really good. Which is you can be very emotionally strong because of the mother's influence, but the father has more of a rational experience that they really bring into the picture, and that's important to have. So if you want to have successful children, well, you want to have both parents. You need a full picture in order, in order to be brought up correctly. So these are the kind of the things that are holding black people back. It's not white people doing this. It's not white people that say, "Hey, you're not allowed to marry that." You're not allowed to marry that black guy. You're not allowed to have like a two-parent family. No, that's not white people saying that. It's black people deciding not to get married. It's black people that have made that bad decision. So they have to take responsibility for those bad decisions. And that's something that they really need to change in their community. Much like racism is not the problem. It's just not. It's one of those magic words. It's like, oh, it's just racism. If you can explain away everything by this magic word, but it's not really the reason for what's happening. Um, So this is kind of what I want to get at, is that if you want to really help the Black community, first they have to help themselves. They have to build stronger communities, they have to build stronger families, and they have to put more emphasis on education. If you look at the culture within a lot of these like poorer neighborhoods, it's really the ghetto culture, the prison culture as well, where they sort of promote the idea that it's cool not to be educated. It's cool to be like a gangster. And it's one of those things that does not promote success within that group. If your role model is a gangster, well then your bar for success is really pretty low. Um, but if your bar is, if your role model is somebody that's super smart, super like successful in terms of like education, then you're probably going to, you're going to emulate that, and you're going to probably be more likely to achieve those things. So that's another thing that has to change, that the culture has to change, where they have to stop using these gangster role models, and they have to be honest that this is a problem, and that they have to address this problem and change the culture. Like, I'm not sure how easy it is to change the culture, but it is a culture that needs to change. And one of the first things that we have to do is we have to stop listening to Black people. This is the mistake that I hear so much, and it drives me crazy. Is that the narrative is that we have to listen to Black people, that they have grievances and they should be listened to. And you think, well, that makes sense. We should listen to these people. They have legitimate concerns. Um, but what happens is it's like the whining child, and like, and I mean this in the most disrespectful way. Actually, I do mean it to be disrespectful. That we see these people as children when we say we have to listen to them. And I think that is super disrespectful of Black people, that we they whine, oh, we have to listen to them. No, you don't listen to the whiny child. You ignore the whiny child until they prove that they're worth listening to. Like when they have real arguments, when they say, hey, this is the injustice that we're facing, then you listen to them. But you don't listen to them just because they're whining, just because they're having a temper tantrum, like they're breaking their stuff. That's what I see when I see these riots. I see like babies. I see like little babies breaking their stuff and having, like a big fit. I don't see adults with legitimate concerns. I see children acting like children. And I don't want to listen to children. I want to listen to adults. I want to listen to people that show respect, that show that they are bringing a real message, that they have a legitimate concern, because there's no legitimate concern with this riots. There's no, they haven't proved to me that they have a legitimate grievance. Because if they want justice, they've gotten justice. What else is it that they want? Um, you know, and if they believe that this is racism, that that shows me that they really haven't thought through this circumstance, and they don't understand what has actually happened. So I don't see them as fully functioning adults, because they're not acting like adults. So I don't want to listen to them until they're willing to show that they really understand the circumstance, that they're willing to take ownership over their own mistakes, and that they are more functioning adults. Okay, so this is why, as I said, I go against the narrative that we should just listen to them just for the sake of listening to these whining children. We don't listen to whiny children, because that only encourages more whininess, more complaints. So this has been my fairly long explanation of what I saw this last week with all the crazy riots and all this stuff about George Floyd. I kind of wanted to address all the elements of it. And as a result, I made a fairly long video, but I kind of want to quickly go over what those points were. One was what really happened with George Floyd, and I sort of explained that there's a bigger problem. And if you want to use the word systemic problem, it was a systemic problem because it's in the police handbook, that there is a problem with the police handbook. And it's not a racist problem. It's a problem that what it's going to lead to more people potentially getting injured because it can be misinterpreted. It can lead to problems where arrests go wrong because it's just poorly worded. Um, that's one issue. The second issue is the riots themselves, that this is not the way to get justice. Peaceful protests are fine. If you want justice, have legitimate reasons for why you're protesting. And the assumption that this is racism is just, it's just not there. There is no racism in this case. And if you want to look at the third issue is what is the real truth about the situation of blacks in America? Are they being unfairly treated? What is the narrative that we're being taught? Is it real that these poor black people are being oppressed? Or is it that actually they're being advantaged? And how can we, the fourth thing is how can we help black people? How can black people help themselves, I should say, to be better, to be more successful? And that's really changing the culture. So these have been kind of my points that I've been trying to make. I hope I was fairly clear in what I was saying. I don't belittle black people. I don't, I understand that they are in a situation of pain. But I want them to wake up and say, hey, look, what is really going on here? What is our real problem? What do we really want? And I want them to come to the table with legitimate concerns and resolve those concerns. Like let's fix the problem. So this has been Socially Triggered. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give me feedback. I enjoy it. I got a lot of comments on my other George Floyd video. I'll link that in the description as well, and you can take a look at it. I'll link the studies that I mentioned in the description as well, so you can check out those. And hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Bye.